At 02:10 a.m., October 27, 2025, inside a cramped control cabin at Domodedovo Airport, the crew of a Panzer S-1 missile battery was in the middle of a turkey shoot. Ukrainian drones were being systematically blasted from the Moscow sky. Then, a warning flashed on the targeting computer that turned a routine defense into a desperate countdown to annihilation. The system was firing missiles every 3 seconds, a furious metronomic rhythm of destruction. But the swarm wasn't getting any smaller. This was no longer a defense. It had become a race of attrition, a terrifying mathematical problem playing out in real time. Based on their remaining missile count, they had exactly 75 seconds of continuous fire left before the first wave of unstoppable targets breached the airport's perimeter. The reason the swarm wasn't shrinking was as simple as it was terrifying. The Russians were being tricked into fighting an army of ghosts. This entire attack force of 193 targets was a carefully constructed lie. 154 of them were decoys, nothing more than cheap flying circuit boards programmed with a single, glorious mission: to die spectacularly and bleed Russia's most advanced air defenses dry. The real threat, a pack of just 39 Luti drones, flew silently among the phantoms, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The decoys operated using a brilliant piece of electronic warfare the Ukrainians called ghost mode. It was deceptively simple. Each decoy broadcast its radar position on a 3.6-second delay. This means the Panzer's multi-million-dollar missile doesn't arrive at a target, it arrives at a memory. It punches a superheated hole through an empty piece of sky, the exact spot where the drone was 3.5 seconds ago. So, while the Panzer crew watched 34 successful fireballs light up the night, they were completely, blissfully unaware that for every ghost they killed, 5 more real drones had already slipped past them into the darkness. But this masterful trap would have been impossible without Russia's first catastrophic mistake, a mistake made 40 minutes earlier that sealed the fate of everyone at the airport. The entire 193 drone swarm first had to get past Moscow's outer shield, the S-400 long-range radar, the crown jewel of Russia's air defense network. That system is programmed with a sophisticated Doppler filter designed to ignore ground clutter, slow-moving objects near the Earth, like cars, migrating birds, or cows. A drone flying at just 20 feet off the ground, hugging the terrain, doesn't register as a threat. It registers as noise. The S-400 is like a nightclub bouncer told to ignore anyone who isn't dressed for a fight. The swarm, an airborne apocalypse, looked to the computer like a slow-moving traffic jam. The S-400 saw it, classified it as harmless, and let it pass without firing a single shot. And so now at 02:11 a.m., the Panzer crew is wasting their last precious missiles on ghosts, completely blind to the fact that the real killers are already past the gate and lining up their attack runs on the airport. While the Panzer crew was fighting for their lives at Domodedovo, the real attack was unfolding 20 miles away at Zhukovsky Military Airport. This entire operation wasn't just an attack, it was a masterpiece of misdirection, a classic two-pronged assault designed by a military genius with a very mean streak. The 154 decoys had one job: fly high at 500 feet, light up Russian radar like a Christmas tree, and act as the world's most expensive skeet shooting targets. Their flight path was deliberately provocative, a straight, arrogant line designed to draw every eye and every missile, screaming, "Look at me!" But while the big boys were making all the noise upstairs, the 39 real killers were down in the dirt. At 02:12 a.m., they entered the final phase of their approach. They flew at just 20 feet, using the thick, rolling fog and the ancient trees of the Zhukovsky forest as their own personal stealth cloak. They weren't just flying a straight line, that's amateur hour. Each of those 39 drones had an AI brain, loaded with a flight path of 1,024 separate waypoints. This wasn't just navigation, it was choreography. Imagine programming a cruise missile with the agility of a hummingbird, designed to bob and weave through every known radar gap, every blind spot in Russia's billion-dollar defense network. It was a route calculated with surgical precision to be invisible. But here's the detail that turns this from a simple attack into a work of art. They weren't flying blind. Months ago, Ukrainian intelligence had discovered a digital backdoor left over from the Soviet era in the airport's own security camera system. While Russian soldiers stared at the sky, Ukrainian operators were watching their targets in real time from the enemy's own cameras. It was the military equivalent of calling your opponent in a chess match and asking them to describe their side of the board for you. At 02:15 a.m., the Pantsir S1 system at Domodedovo wasn't engaged in a battle. It was the victim of a classic denial-of-service attack, and its operators were the last to know. The 154 decoys weren't just programmed to fly and die. They were programmed to be the most annoying, computationally expensive targets imaginable. They flew in layered, repeating waves, their flight paths intersecting in ways that forced the Pantsir's targeting computer to dedicate 100% of its processing power to tracking and engage them. From a tech perspective, this is pure genius. The decoys acted like a botnet, flooding a server with junk traffic. The Pantsir's powerful multi-core processor became so consumed with handling the fake requests, calculating trajectories for ghosts, prioritizing non-existent threats, that it had zero bandwidth left to scan for the real ones. The entire point of the Domodedovo swarm wasn't to survive the Pantsir, it was to keep it so monumentally busy that it couldn't even turn its head to look 20 miles down the road toward Zhukovsky Airport. While the $15 million system was effectively turned into the world's most expensive paperweight, running a pointless diagnostic on junk data, the real malware, the 39 killer drones, was being uploaded directly to Russia's most sensitive hardware, completely unopposed. At 02:25 a.m., the Russian commanders at Tchaikovsky finally realized they were being played. The decoy swarm was a distraction, and their Pantsir systems were out of the game. The frantic radio chatter confirmed their worst fears. So they did what any cornered bear would do. They escalated with brute force. They scrambled their apex predators, 2 Su-35 fighter jets. These $80 million machines tore through the sky, their pilots tasked with one simple mission: hunt and kill. The fog and ground clutter made their radar useless, so they switched to their most lethal weapon, heat-seeking missiles. These are digital blood dogs, designed to lock on to the faintest thermal signature of an engine from miles away and never let go. The pilots ripped through the fog, their advanced infrared scopes scanning the forest below for the 39 Luchii drones, but they found nothing, just cold, empty air, not a flicker of heat, not a single electronic signature. The drones had vanished. So, where were the 39 killers? They weren't gone. They had gone to sleep. This is where Ukrainian genius goes to a whole new level of psychological warfare. The 39 drones hadn't just flown into a pipe, that's for Hollywood movies. Instead, using the chaos of the decoy swarm as cover, each drone had flown to a pre-programmed hibernation point, a thicket of trees, a shallow ditch, or, in a stroke of sheer audacity, an overgrown culvert of Zhukovsky's 50-year-old Soviet storm drain system, and landed. Then, they shut down their engines completely. A cold gasoline engine has zero thermal signature. It radiates the exact same amount of heat as the frozen mud around it. Trying to find that with a high-tech infrared scope is like trying to find a specific parked car in a crowded lot by only looking for running engines. If the engine's off, it's just another piece of cold, invisible metal. It's like trying to find a polar bear in a snowstorm by looking for its shadow. Russia's $80 million fighter jets, the pride of their air force, were rendered completely useless by the simple act of turning off an engine, and Putin's best pilots were left staring at an empty heat scope, wondering if they were being haunted by ghosts. At 02:40 a.m., with his fighter jets flying blind and his automated defenses tied in digital knots, the Russian commander on the ground did the only thing he had left to do. He went all in. He unleashed the hounds. 500 Spetsnaz operators, Russia's elite special forces, fanned out into the fog-drenched forest around Zhukovsky. But they weren't on a scavenger hunt, they were a wolf pack. They set up a perimeter, established overlapping fields of fire, and deployed sensitive acoustic sensors to listen for the faintest electronic hum. They were hunting in the dark, and they were the most dangerous predators on the planet. This was the true limit of Ukrainians' plan. They had outsmarted the computers and outmaneuvered the jets, but now they faced 500 highly trained human beings who wouldn't be fooled by electronic ghosts. The drones were hidden, but they were also trapped in a tightening steel cage. For the Ukrainian commanders watching on their hacked camera feeds, the question became terrifyingly simple. Do we activate them now and risk a bloodbath, or wait and risk them being found one by one? At 02:50 a.m., the Ukrainian commanders made their choice. There was no more time for stealth. The encrypted signal pulsed from Kyiv. Wake up, all of you, right now. The forest erupted. The sound of 39 engines roaring to life simultaneously was the dinner bell for the Spetsnaz. Muzzle flashes lit up the fog as every operator opened fire on the nearest sound. It was no longer a hunt. It was a point-blank ambush fought in a cathedral of mist and tracers. This was a bloodbath. 7 drones were shredded before their rotors could even achieve full lift, their components scattered across the forest floor. Another 5 were hit as they struggled to climb above the tree line, spiraling back to Earth in brilliant balls of fire. In less than 90 seconds, 12 drones, nearly a third of the entire attack force, were turned into burning wreckage. The Spetsnaz were not incompetent. They were lethal, and they had just exacted a heavy price. But it was a chaotic, desperate firefight. For every drone an operator could target, 2 more were already lifting off from a different direction. The fog that had blinded the jets now became the drone's best shield, confusing lines of sight and muffling sounds. As the surviving 27 drones cleared the tray line, battered but airborne, the Russian commanders probably thought they had just won a major victory. They had crushed the assault, defending the motherland from a technologically advanced attack. They were wrong. They had been looking at the wrong chessboard the entire time. Because while their best soldiers were fighting for their lives in the forest, the real target, the massive, completely undefended jet fuel depot at the heart of Zhukovsky, was being watched in crystal clear HD streamed directly from the airport's own hacked security cameras. The Russians had won the battle in the woods, but Ukraine was about to win the war. At 02:52 a.m., the heart of Zhukovsky Airport was an island of chaos in a sea of chaos. While their best soldiers were still chasing echoes in the fog, the airport's ground crew was on a coffee break. An air traffic controller was probably scrolling through TikTok. They had no idea that 27 vengeful, battle-hardened drones were screaming out of the darkness, converging on their position from multiple vectors. The surviving drones weren't flying stealthy anymore. There was no more need for cleverness. They were charging full throttle. 43 seconds to impact. On the hacked security camera feed, the Ukrainian commanders watched the tranquil scene, a perfect diorama of blissful ignorance. This wasn't just an attack. It was a punchline about to be delivered at 120 miles per hour. Russia thought the party was over. Ukraine was about to bring the fireworks. When the first drone hit the primary jet fuel tank, it wasn't a simple explosion. It was a physics lesson delivered with extreme prejudice. The drone's 110-pound warhead was a shaped charge designed not to blast, but to pierce. On impact, it unleashed a needle-thin jet of molten copper, screaming at 16,000 miles per hour. That jet sliced through the tank's reinforced steel wall like a hot knife through butter. The real magic happened inside. The jet of superheated plasma atomized and ignited the massive cloud of jet fuel vapor, turning thousands of gallons into a roaring, expanding fireball. The blast generated a localized electromagnetic pulse, a mini EMP that disrupted any unshielded electronics within a 300-foot radius. There was no loud crack, just a deep, gut-wrenching thump that felt like the air itself was being torn in half. The ground shook as if from a magnitude 4.0 earthquake. A fireball lit up the night like a second sun, visible from downtown Moscow. Then, just as suddenly, came the darkness. The EMP hit. Every light, every radar screen, every radio on the base went dead. 1 second, they were in a functioning military airport. The next, they were in a dark, burning junkyard, deafened and blinded. The fireball over the fuel depot was just the beginning. The real damage was the silent, cascading collapse that spread through the airport like a virus, turning a functioning military base into a tomb in under 5 minutes. The initial shockwave was an act of architectural vandalism. The burning fuel depot, now a $50 million bonfire, created a thermal column so intense it cracked the main runway in a dozen places. The primary communication tower buckled and crashed to the ground. But the EMP from the blast was the digital guillotine. It didn't just turn out the lights, it lobotomized the base's entire nervous system. 160 of Russia's own patrol drones fell out of the sky like bricks, their circuits fried. This digital silence created a human nightmare. The surviving Spetsnaz operators in the forest reached for their satellite phones, but found only static. The chain of command wasn't just broken, it was vaporized. Junior officers were screaming for orders that their terrified commanders, trapped in dark, powerless command posts, couldn't give. But Ukraine wasn't done. The destruction of Zhukovsky wasn't the endgame, it was the starting gun for round 2. With Ukrainian intelligence confirming the base was deaf, dumb, and blind, a new order was given. Phase 2 was greenlit. For the next 72 hours, Russia's air response capability from the entire Moscow region was effectively zero. The sky was wide open, and that was an invitation. A second swarm of 50 Lutii drones, already pre-positioned in Sumy, lifted into the air. Their target wasn't an airport, it was the vulnerable supply convoys now stuck on the highways leading to Moscow, completely exposed and with no air cover. At the same time, Ukrainian HIMARS batteries, given pre-approved targets, began a relentless barrage, firing without any fear of counter-battery radar. The most humiliating part? The surviving S-400 batteries could see it all happening. Their screens, slowly coming back online, could see the HIMARS launches. They could see the second drone swarm. But without orders from a functioning command center, they were legally and functionally paralyzed. All they could do was watch as their supply lines burned. It was the military equivalent of watching your house get robbed on your own security camera while you're tied to a chair. You can see everything, but you were completely, utterly powerless to stop it. In the 48 hours that followed, Moscow went into full damage control, but you can't hide a 5-mile column of black smoke. Satellite imagery posted by OSINT analysts confirmed the catastrophic damage, but the clearest evidence came from the flight trackers. Over 100 international flights were canceled as Domodedovo and Zhukovsky were turned into giant smoking parking lots. But the real story isn't about burning fuel or canceled flights. This operation burned the entire Russian military doctrine to the ground. It proved that a concrete fortress defended by billion-dollar radar systems could be brought to its knees by a couple dozen $5,000 drones and a 50-year-old storm drain. And the timing was everything. This happened right as a new administration in Washington was threatening to cut aid. This strike was Ukraine's answer. It sent a clear message to NATO. Your investment is paying off. And it sent a message to Putin right before the Geneva negotiations: your position is weaker than you think. He wanted to roll into those talks looking like a king. Ukraine just made him look like a guy who got his wallet stolen at the gas station. So, if you think this level of strategic genius deserves support, smash that like button and subscribe. Now, I'll leave you with this challenge. If you were the Russian commander, how the hell do you defend against an enemy that uses your own storm drains as a highway? Drop your best ideas in the comments below. Bye for now.